Although they are used by the majority of people worldwide, affordable phones definitely do not attract the same level of attention as flagship models or even those from the mid-range segment. Understandably so, because by their nature they do not bring any novelties and are often very boring look-alike and have similar specifications. However, this time we have the opportunity to test a very affordable phone that costs only around €200, but which brings certain features that we have not seen on any other phone, including flagship models. The fact that in this case innovations debut on a lower class model is a precedent that we see rarely or almost never, which makes this phone all the more interesting and a truly unique option in this price range, or for any amount of money for users who can benefit from its distinct features. A model that is a true refreshment in this category is brought by Chinese TCL, a technological giant that is very active in terms of innovation, especially in the display segment. We saw what they were capable of in our TV reviews or at the IFA fair, where they had a very impressive booth, but TCL also uses its display innovations in their mobile phones, the first of which debuted 4 years ago with the Plex model. While it may not be the best TCL phone we've seen, the TCL 40 NXTPaper is definitely the most interesting one. The main reason for this is the second generation NXTPaper screen, which we've already encountered on their tablets, but we're seeing it for the first time on a phone. And we can say that in this case it makes at least as much sense in terms of user benefits. Of course, that's not the only thing that makes this phone interesting, but we'll get to that. The first thing that catches the eye is certainly the design, which combines the current industry trend with a bit of TCL's own flavor. On its previous models, the company deviated from what everyone else was doing, which some users liked while others didn't. This time, the TCL 40 NXTPaper has a more classic design, which will probably appeal to a much wider audience, though the manufacturer tried to make the phone look good and, well, expensive for its class. The phone comes with a one-piece frame that's flat on all sides, something we've seen on a number of models this year, and similar to the standard set by the iPhone. The frame looks like it's made of anodized metal with a sheen that changes at different lighting angles, but is actually plastic. The back of the phone is made of the same material but resembles sandblasted glass, with a surface that will change shade from dark navy to bright blue on this particular variant. By the way, besides this midnight blue, there's also an opalescent version, white if you will, also with iridescent light but in different colors like a pearl or, as the name suggests, opal. Unlike the entire surface of the back, the TCL logo is polished and provides a nice contrast, at times appearing as if it were engraved. As for the camera system, it is placed in the upper left corner within a rectangular element that is about 1 mm above the surface of the phone, while the 3 sensors and the flash are divided into 2 circular frames that are additionally raised by about 1 mm. A solution that visually, like all camera systems, will be a matter of taste. Different, although certainly more classic than on some previous TCL models. Anyway, tell us how you like it in the comments below. As for the elements on the phone's frame, on the right side there is a dual volume adjustment button, very precise we must add, as well as power button with an integrated fingerprint reader. Fingerprint unlock is fast, though a bit finicky about finger placement. Facial unlock is also supported and works pretty well. On the right side there is a combined slot for 2 nano SIM cards and 1 microSD card for memory expansion. On the top we find only one opening for the microphone, while on the bottom there is another one, as well as USB Type-C port, a mono speaker and, interestingly, a 3.5mm headphone connector, which some of the users will be pleased to see, and which actually makes the most sense in this class where customers are probably less likely to own wireless headphones. As for the sound produced by the speaker, it is not exactly great quality, about what we'd expect for the price, but it does its job. The front of this phone is its most interesting part and features a 6.78-inch screen with 2.5D glass, though we were unable to find any info on the type of protection it offers. Speaking of protection, TCL offers an optional case for the phone that is also unusual for this class, very high quality and sturdy with a rubberized surface outside and a soft layer on the inside. It comes with a flip-out stand for laying the phone at an angle on the table, as well as a stylus in an integrated slot that can be removed with a click. Very interesting and unusual for an affordable model, and potentially useful for those who like or need to use a stylus. But back to the screen. The very first look at it, before you even turn on the phone, reveals that it is very atypical, because the surface is more reminiscent of the back of the phone than the screen. TCL has implemented its second-generation NXTPaper screen on this model, which we recently saw on their NXTPaper 11 tablet. It comes with a fully made top surface that almost completely eliminates any ambient light reflections. Actually, it's an IPS-type screen with 90Hz refresh rate and a punch hole cutout for the front camera, but with additional technologies patented by TCL aimed at providing a display that is more comfortable to view. For example, it features blue light filtering at the hardware level, as well as softer light that the phone emits towards the user, resulting in less eye strain during prolonged viewing. The impact of blue light reduction is not so easy to check in a test like this, but the softer light will immediately be noticeably more pleasing to the eye than that of regular phones, especially at night or in darker rooms. Unlike the direct projection of light on other phones that can be tough on the eyes, diffused light is much more comfortable for longer viewing. In addition, as the screen surface is completely matte, reflections are avoided almost entirely, which also results in less eye fatigue trying to discern between reflections and then actual content. This is hard to explain until you see this phone in person next to one with a standard reflective display, when the difference is immediately very evident. And indeed, reading books, viewing internet content, especially in dark mode, is significantly more pleasant, and in this sense, the NXTPaper screen absolutely hits a bullseye. Now, for the outdoor use, our impressions didn't quite match the TCL's claim regarding visibility in bright direct sunlight. Although the visibility is very decent in daytime with a measured 520 nits of brightness, and the screen outside has an advantage in terms of reflections compared to standard screens, at a certain angle, when it is directly facing the sun, it will be completely unreadable, unlike the standard screens that retain at least a bit of visibility. The reason for this is the diffusion of light by the surface layer of the screen, which in this case works against you, so on a sunny day you will have to take care of the angle in relation to the sun. Overall though, we'd say the benefit is absolutely greater indoors than the downside with direct sunlight, and most users will love the benefits of this screen in real-world use. Despite its specifics, the screen actually provides a very nice display in terms of colors and contrast, which is not often the case with color e-ink and screens with stronger anti-reflective coatings. The display is very close to the quality we expect from a good IPS screen. It is not pale or unconvincing, so we must say that TCL has done an excellent job with this technology. We even measured very solid color accuracy with delta deviation of 4.1. TCL also wanted to upgrade the advantages of this screen through software, so in the settings in the NXTPaper section you will find NXTPaper mode, which offers the option of emulating the appearance of color paper and ink paper screens. The first will be even more pleasant for viewing content in color, like a printed magazine on a matte paper, while the ink paper is a black and white variant that is ideal for long hours of reading books and offers a reading experience that surpasses any phone that we have had the opportunity to see so far. When it comes to display-related software options, in the settings you'll also find a Next Vision section, in which you can activate options to improve display of images, videos, or in games, activate the reading mode, additional reduction of blue light, more brightness for outdoor use, or change the color mode from natural to vivid, saturated, or sRGB. In terms of hardware, the TCL 4D NXTPaper is powered by the MediaTek Helio G88 chipset that we know from the models like the Redmi 12 or the Realme C55. For this class, a decent choice combined with 8GB of RAM, another 8GB of virtual memory, and 256GB of storage space. It is worth noting that there is also a 5G version of this phone that comes with a more powerful Dimensity 6020, but it is a very different and more expensive device. As for the performance, it is decent and adequate for a phone of this price, although someone coming from a higher-end model will notice that the interface is not quite as fast or smooth when scrolling through the interface. Mali G52MC2 graphics handles games fairly well, and even in more demanding 3D titles like PUBG Mobile or Asphalt, it is possible to have an acceptable gaming experience, at lower settings of course. One thing that is another strong point of this model is the battery life, because after 10 hours of YouTube video playback with 50% brightness, our test ended with 28% battery, which is not a great result. The battery capacity is 5010 mAh, in the ballpark of the mentioned models with Helio G88, which leads us to conclusion that the reason for the higher consumption is the screen and not the chipset itself. Low consumption during periods where we did not use the screen confirms this, so those who do not use the phone too much during the day with an active screen will probably get quite decent autonomy. The phone comes with a 33-watt charger that charges half the battery in about half an hour. In terms of software, TCL 4D NXTPaper comes with Android 13 operating system and TCL UI 5 user interface. The phone provides a relatively standard experience that does not deviate too much from the reference Android, although there are some small changes and additional options that make it easier to use, but also leave the impression that it is an interface that has been given a little extra attention by the manufacturer. The look of the interface is quite decent, so the only complaint concerns a bit of pre-installed bloatware, which fortunately can be easily deleted. In terms of cameras, the TCL 4D NXTPaper comes with 3 on the back, a 50MP main, a 5MP ultrawide and 2MP macro, as well as 32MP selfie camera on the front. The main sensor, which will get the most use, comes with an aperture of f1.85 and face detection autofocus, and we can say that it provides quite decent performance in daily conditions for this class of phone. Despite the 50MP, it is a physically small sensor that doesn't excel in terms of detail and sharpness, although TCL has implemented a little extra sharpening that gives the impression that photos are sharper than they actually are, especially when viewed on the phone screen or on social networks. The dynamic range is quite alright, as is the noise level. Color reproduction is relatively natural, although the phone will slightly compensate and boost them in cloudy conditions so that photos do not appear pale or unconvincing. Overall, we are satisfied with the main camera for this class, and it is more than usable for taking quite decent photos. The same cannot be said for the ultra-wide sensor though. It sometimes took photos at a level that we expect from a 5MP sensor of this type, so not too much detail but usable. Still, more than 50% of the time it took really bad photos with too much noise that seemed like they were taken with some low-end webcam. Realistically, TCL could have just dished this sensor altogether because it just spoils the impression and is not very useful even when it does its best. Although we expected the same from the 2MP macro sensor, especially since it has a fixed focus, we have to admit that it does a more than decent job for what it is, both in terms of focus and level of detail. We assume that the reason for this is the well-designed software Super Macro mode, which processes the image on the fly, merges frames, sharpens, etc., which separates this phone from many that use an identical 2MP sensor. Speaking of processing, the night mode will be available only on the main camera, which is expected, and in it taking a photo takes exactly 5 seconds, during which time the phone performs multiple exposures and merges them into the final result. Now, of course, this isn't the best night mode we've seen, but if we remember that it's a phone that costs around €200, the photos are actually quite good. Solid level of detail and low noise in most situations, and interestingly colors that are not exaggerated but quite realistic, as well as scene contrast and brightness. In fact, the night photos of this model look quite similar to what the eye sees, so we give them a more than favorable rating for this class. As for the video recording, it won't really impress you for several reasons. First, it's limited to Full HD resolution, so the quality isn't that great to boot, even if you're shooting a completely static scene. Any movement, shaky hands or shooting while walking makes the footage almost unusable due to non-existing stabilization. The irony is that ultra-wide camera is often better in this case because it is more stable due to the wider angle, and the resolution limitation minimizes the difference in quality. At night, the video from the main camera will be usable, but not too much more than that, while the ultra-wide is already out of its element and you can forget about it. Let's not forget the 32-megapixel front-facing camera that makes a solid impression during the day and provides a very decent level of detail and color reproduction, albeit with a bit of extra sharpening. It is usable at night, but not great. As for the selfie videos, of course also Full HD, they are fine if we exclude the non-existent stabilization, which in this case is actually less annoying than on the main camera, or the sharpening, which can make you look noticeably older. Night selfies can be quite decent as long as there is enough street light. In summary, the TCL 4D NXTPaper is undoubtedly a very interesting phone, primarily because of the unique NXTPaper screen, which can be a very tangible advantage in real use. The problem is that in this case it is possible to find models with an objectively stronger and more energy-efficient Snapdragon chipset and AMOLED screen. Therefore, the TCL 4D NXTPaper will be primarily considered by those who value its advantages and want a display that is as pleasing to the eyes as possible. Our recommendation would be to definitely go to a nearby store and see this phone in person, because the TCL NXTPaper is something worth seeing. Who knows, you might just like it enough to get one. As always, we would like to hear your impressions, so please share them with us in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to our channel for more tech content. You're watching Bench House, my name is Ivan, and I'll see you next time.